You know that moment when someone starts telling you about a problem they're dealing with, and before they even finish speaking, your brain is already trying to solve it? Maybe a friend casually mentions they're stressed, and suddenly you're researching solutions at midnight like their emotional well-being somehow became your personal responsibility. Or someone close to you seems slightly distant for a day, and now your mind won't fully relax until you figure out what changed. Most people think this simply means you're caring or dependable, but psychology suggests something much deeper may be happening underneath it. Because for certain people, fixing things isn't just kindness, it becomes a way of managing emotional discomfort itself. And honestly, once you notice this pattern, you start seeing it everywhere. Psychologists have quietly documented how some people become emotionally hyper-attuned to instability, tension, or unresolved problems, not because they enjoy stress, but because their nervous system reacts strongly to things feeling emotionally unfinished. To them, unresolved conflict feels almost like background noise that never fully shuts off. A strange tension sits quietly in the back of the mind until something is repaired, resolved, or emotionally settled again. And what makes this fascinating is that most people who do this don't even realize how automatic it has become. You may be the person who constantly checks whether everyone else is okay before asking yourself the same question. You notice changes in people's moods almost instantly. You replay conversations later, trying to figure out whether someone secretly felt hurt or misunderstood. You feel uncomfortable walking away from unresolved situations because part of your brain keeps treating them like unfinished tasks. And the important thing here is this isn't necessarily about control the way people assume. More often, it's about emotional regulation. Fixing things creates relief. It temporarily quiets the mental tension your brain has been carrying. Think about it like emotional clutter. Some people can leave dishes in the sink for 2 days and barely notice them. Other people walk into the kitchen and immediately feel mentally overwhelmed by the unfinished mess sitting there. Emotionally, fixers experience relationships in a very similar way. Awkward tension, unresolved feelings, emotional distance, conflict, uncertainty, or signs that something may fall apart create psychological noise in the mind. And because the brain naturally seeks closure, people with fixer tendencies often feel an intense urge to restore balance as quickly as possible. Their mind becomes constantly occupied with repairing what feels emotionally unstable. Now here's where things become psychologically interesting and honestly a little emotional. A lot of people who become fixers learned very early in life that emotional stability was unpredictable. Maybe conflict in the household lasted too long. Maybe you became the calm one because other people were emotionally reactive. Maybe you discovered that being helpful earned approval, affection, or safety. Or maybe you simply learned that paying close attention to everyone else's emotions helped you avoid problems before they escalated. And over time, your brain adapted around this environment. You became observant, emotionally alert, highly aware of tension, skilled at reading people's moods before they even spoke. And from the outside, these traits often look admirable. People probably describe you as thoughtful, dependable, emotionally intelligent, mature, or selfless. You become the person others naturally lean on during difficult moments because you know how to stabilize situations. But internally, something more complicated is happening beneath all of this. Slowly, you begin associating your worth with usefulness. You feel most secure when helping, most valued when solving, most emotionally connected when someone needs something from you. And honestly, this creates a strange contradiction that a lot of fixers struggle with. You become incredibly skilled at understanding everyone else while gradually losing touch with yourself. You know exactly how to comfort another person during emotional pain, but if someone suddenly asks what you need emotionally, your mind sometimes goes blank. Not because you don't have feelings, but because your attention has been directed outward for so long that your own emotional world starts fading into the background. Your brain becomes so focused on managing external stability that it rarely pauses long enough to process its own exhaustion. And here's the part people rarely talk about honestly enough of. Many fixers struggle to simply sit with discomfort, not because they're weak, but because unresolved tension genuinely feels psychologically unsafe to them. If someone is sad, your instinct is to help solve it. If someone is distant, your brain immediately wants to repair the connection. If someone around you feels emotionally overwhelmed, you absorb part of that emotional weight almost automatically. And when you can't fix something, it often leaves behind guilt or helplessness, even when the situation was never truly your responsibility in the first place. That's what makes this pattern so emotionally draining. People who love fixing things are often carrying far more than others realize. Because they appear calm, capable, and emotionally strong externally, nobody fully sees how crowded their inner world actually feels. There's constantly something to manage, monitor, anticipate, or emotionally repair. And over time, many fixers begin feeling emotionally exhausted without understanding why. They assume they simply need to try harder or become even more helpful, when in reality their nervous system has been operating in survival mode for years. But here's the subtle shift psychology points towards. Healthy connection does not require you to emotionally manage everything around you. In fact, one of the hardest lessons fixers eventually learn is that love and responsibility are not the same thing. You can deeply care about someone without absorbing all of their emotional pain. You can support people without saving them. You can sit beside discomfort without immediately trying to eliminate it. And for people whose nervous systems are wired towards fixing, that realization can feel deeply unfamiliar at first because stillness itself feels uncomfortable. A lot of fixers secretly believe rest has to be earned, that they can finally relax once everyone else is okay, once every problem is solved, once the tension disappears completely. But life rarely works that way. There will always be another unresolved situation, another emotional complication, another person struggling with something beyond your control. And eventually, many people begin realizing that constantly carrying everyone else's emotional weight does not create peace. Sometimes it simply prevents you from noticing how exhausted you've become yourself. So this doesn't mean empathy is unhealthy. Compassion is not the problem here. Caring deeply about people is not a flaw. The issue happens when your nervous system believes your value depends entirely on how useful, reliable, or emotionally supportive you can be for everyone else. Because eventually, even emotionally strong people become overwhelmed when they treat every broken thing around them as their responsibility to carry. And honestly, once people understand this pattern, something inside them usually softens a little. They stop viewing their exhaustion as weakness and start recognizing it as emotional overfunctioning that stayed active for too long. So if you've always been the person who fixes things, who steps in, who notices tension before anyone else, psychology suggests there may be nothing wrong with you at all. In many cases, your mind simply adapted to environments where emotional awareness felt necessary for connection, stability, or safety. The goal isn't becoming cold or detached. It's learning that your worth still exists even when you're resting, even when problems remain unresolved, even when you're not actively holding everything together for everyone else around you. And maybe that's the strange truth underneath people who love fixing things. Beneath all the helping, solving, repairing, and emotional caretaking, there's often someone searching for peace, the kind that comes from realizing you do not have to carry every emotional burden in the room to deserve love, connection, or rest. Because sometimes understanding a hidden psychological pattern doesn't instantly change your life, but it changes the way you interpret yourself. And once you start seeing your own mind more clearly, you begin carrying your inner world with a little more compassion instead of constant pressure to keep fixing everything around you.